of subscribers. It's very data driven in terms of the messages that we try and get out, and I think in that respect, from a PR point of view, and also taking the other view as a journalist, I think we have to be quite creative to keep that attention, to keep that interest. When you're talking about numbers, they can be quite dry, so you have to find new ways of telling that story that's going to interest both the media and also the customers and the viewers, because otherwise you just get drowned in a sea of numbers, and you don't really kind of land the key point that you're trying to. So from Sky Sports' point of view, there's kind of three central things that, if you had Barney here, who's the managing director, or you had anyone really standing up and talking about what makes Sky Sports successful over the years, these are kind of the three key things. So it's the rights that we have, it's the talent, and it's the quality of our production. So those are kind of, from our storytelling and our PR, those are the key kind of components that we use to be able to communicate with customers and tell them through the media why Sky is kind of head and shoulders above the rest. So these are some of the recent kind of Premier League deals that we've done. Premier League in particular is also always a fascinating kind of tender process. There was a huge amount of media interest in the competition at the start of last year, 2015. The final deal was £5.2 billion over 3 years between ourselves and BT Sport. Staggering numbers. I think something like a 70% increase on the previous deal. And I think everyone thought that it would go up, but I don't think people really speculated that it would go up by quite that much. So you've now got, over the next 3 years, and it's already begun this season, you've got those Premier League rights that we've paid such a high premium for, and now have to be able to return that investment and really continue to attract new subscribers, more viewing, and really kind of more engagement, where people are going to kind of return and keep watching Premier League coverage on Sky Sports. I think there's always been that historical view of Sky, the company, as quite reliant on the rights to live sport. And I think that's definitely evolved over the last 3 or 4 years, but there is certainly still an importance that's placed on premium Sky Sports kind of live coverage, because if you look at just a cross-section of those things there, whether it's cricket, golf, Formula One or football, if people want to be able to watch the very best in the very best quality, they kind of have to go to Sky Sports to get it. So through working kind of with our talent, some of the guys are referenced there, whether it's Paul McGinley, Carragher and Gary Neville, Martin Brundle, Johnny Herbert, across our F1 coverage. You have to be able to pull out the stories from those people, and also from our production. The standards for that studio at Troon in the summer, the M&F, the detail that goes into the statistical analysis and all the data that goes into it. F1, where they travel around the world for kind of 8-9 months, and they go from Singapore to Malaysia through to kind of Brazil, Abu Dhabi and America kind of this month. It's a global kind of sport, and how we cover it really takes huge investment and kind of production quality that you don't really get anywhere else. So being able to tell those stories is kind of where you see the differentiator between us and our competitors. And I think that's where in setting up, whether it's media interviews, setting up engagement, setting up those kind of opportunities where people can look at what we're doing. That's probably the key thing that we try and highlight, and we try and kind of lead on those stories. I think in the last few weeks you might have seen some stories around viewing habits and viewing trends. Kind of the Premier League's the kind of the main focus at the minute. There was a report in the Daily Mail. It was true at the time, 2 weeks ago, that our viewing to Premier League was down 19% compared to last year. It's come down quite a bit now. It's actually about down 12% after the last 2 weeks. We had Liverpool, Manchester United got over 3 million viewers, and then Manchester United, Chelsea as well was over 2 million at the weekend. So our numbers are kind of coming back to normal. But that was something within the media we had to then kind of start to manage that message, start to brief and give out those points, you know, the kind of the nuggets of information that will separate, you know, kind of truth from hearsay, and being able to get to the data and the evidence that tells people, you know, kind of why those things are happening. The Olympics, obviously, in August was a big factor this year compared to last year. So if you're doing a year-on-year comparison in viewing, you take out the fact that there's the Olympics this year. A lot of people are watching that on BBC. Last year there was no Olympics, there was no Euro 2016, there was no kind of competition. So you take out those kinds of things, and actually you get quite a lot of sympathy within the media for the figures and how they're different, and how they will kind of evolve over time. But simply from a newshook point of view, we've paid a lot more money for the rights, and the viewing is actually down. It's quite a simple story for if you're a journalist at the Daily Mail or, you know, kind of the Guardian, the Telegraph, to be able to look at how much you spend on something and see that the kind of the perceived value of it's actually diminishing. It's quite an easy story to write, and we saw quite a few stories about that recently. And how we managed it internally was probably as big a kind of part of our job as it was externally, because you've got, you know, a team of investor relations that are managing the share price, and when people look at the kind of the key rights within our portfolio and say that they're not performing as they should be, it starts to affect the finances and the share price. So that internal management is probably just as important as the external media. Another thing to kind of touch on from Sky's point of view, and this is another kind of key message, and an interesting area for everyone to kind of look at over the next few years. It's how people are changing their consumption habits, and this is not just about sport. Obviously, that's the area that kind of I kind of deal with, but it's how people are changing the way they watch TV, the way they engage with each other, with media. You know, whether it's print journalism and how that's adapting and evolving, and giving people an offering, whether it's on your phone, your tablet, your computer, and the same is true of sports, of entertainment, of movies. There's definitely a move away from people watching kind of everything in a TV schedule. You know, the days of someone watches Coronation Street every night, 7:30, kind of as live, as it's happening in the schedule. That's kind of moving away, and people are more often choosing the TV schedule themselves. In live sport, that can be quite tricky because it happens at that moment, and really, if you don't watch it live, you run that risk of having it spoiled and not being in the moment as much. So in sport, it's not quite as it's not shifted quite as much away from the actual live event itself, but certainly you see a lot, certainly under, you know, kind of under 24, the age bracket, I imagine of most people in this room, you're seeing a lot more viewing on kind of, you know, your iPhone, your smartphone, and in terms of consuming media, reading stories online, the Sky Sports website, the majority of that is coming kind of, you know, on the move, on mobile. And the way that you react to that will kind of play a big part in how Sky Sports kind of engages with customers over the next few years, because if fewer people are watching on TV, they're probably having less reason to subscribe and kind of engage with the Sky platform. They're finding new ways to get their content, whether it's through piracy. You know, you can find a lot of goals at 3:30, 4 o'clock on an afternoon on Twitter. Through Vines, all these kind of illegal streams of ways that people can engage with content. It's similar to kind of music, and, you know, Napster was a legal kind of download site, and maybe about 15, 16 years ago, and it precipitated iTunes and kind of the 79p download one song, because previously record companies would sell a whole album for 10, 15 pounds, and you had to get that even if there was only one song on there that you were kind of keen on. Napster made every song available, you downloaded it, but it was effectively breaking the law, and a lot of what we're seeing in sport now is quite similar in that kind of those habits that people want to be able to watch short, you know, sharp, whether it's just a couple of goals, whether it's just, you know, one match rather than the whole season. That people are viewing sport in legal ways, and that's affecting subscription. It's affecting viewing, you know, that you would previously have seen, because it's you know, it's not as protected. So that's one of the kind of key areas kind of over the next few years that will influence broadcasters, not just Sky, and also media organisations, print newspapers. When you look at the circulation numbers over the last few years, that's certainly something that will be influenced by how they now tackle the new formats and new platforms that they can give news to people on. And if you look at certain newspapers, there are ones that have adapted and adopted these approaches a lot earlier than others, and they're probably the ones that are going to be more successful kind of in the future than the ones that have stuck kind of quite rigidly to their embargo dates, their times of delivering a print newspaper. And you can kind of see that. I don't even need to kind of spell it out, the different kind of papers and the way that they behaved, but those are kind of some of the kind of key differences that you see in print journalism in this country. That's kind of the main points I was going to get across. From Sky's point of view, case studies that we have, and then looking at kind of the future of what it will be, in the next 5 or 10 years from a live sport broadcast point of view. Want to open it up for some questions?
Yeah. Anyone like to ask any questions?
What would it be like on a day-to-day basis? Yeah.
I mean, it can really be quite varied. I think at Sky, it can be quite fixed, and a lot of what we do is quite campaign orientated. So we're looking at the start of the F1 season next March, or the Masters. We're doing a lot of work on the British Lions tour for next summer, as well as the entertainment teams that are looking at programs that are going to be coming out, movies that are going to launch, premieres, our products. Sky Mobile is kind of the next big kind of product that we'll launch early next year. So a lot of the work is done quite in advance, and a lot of planning. But you could get any number of issues that come from live broadcasting. Someone says the wrong thing, or you pick up swearing in the background, and you could be faced with kind of Ofcom complaints. You could be faced with kind of bias, or you get quite a lot of complaints from viewers.